Part 2. Nathan Rothschild and the Napoleonic Wars. By the turn of the 19th century, Europe was convulsed by the ambitions of one man, Napoleon Bonaparte. His armies reshaped borders, toppled monarchies, and demanded vast sums of money to finance campaigns. For a family like the Rothschilds, this chaos was not merely danger, it was opportunity. And the man who would capitalize most decisively was Nathan Mayer Rothschild, the fourth son stationed in London, Europe's rising financial capital. London, the gateway to global finance. London in the early 1800s was a city on the rise. The Industrial Revolution was beginning to reshape society. Factories, railways, and steamships connected people and markets faster than ever before. The London Stock Exchange, though less formalized than today, was becoming the center of global finance. Wealthy merchants, industrialists, and government officials converged here, seeking loans, investments, and guidance. Nathan arrived in London in 1798 at the age of 20. Small in stature but formidable in intellect, he understood that speed, accuracy, and discretion would be the tools of his trade. He quickly earned a reputation for reliability, managing funds for aristocrats and governments who needed someone capable of moving money across borders during wartime. The Napoleonic Wars. A banker's battlefield, Europe from 1799 to 1815 was almost continuously at war. Napoleon's campaigns across Italy, Germany, Spain, and finally into France required extraordinary funding. Armies were expensive. Weapons, supplies, salaries for soldiers, and transport had to be paid for, often in advance. Governments borrowed from wealthy financiers, and the Rothschilds were uniquely positioned to help. Nathan coordinated with his brothers in Frankfurt, Vienna, Paris, and Naples. Their network allowed money, information, and bonds to move faster than any government courier could manage. By combining financial skill with intelligence gathering, the Rothschilds could provide loans to governments at precise moments of need, transfer gold securely across Europe, even through war zones, react to events faster than competitors, gaining enormous profits. Nathan, in particular, became the linchpin of this operation. London, protected by the Royal Navy, was relatively safe from invasion. From this base, Nathan could direct funds to armies and allies, while simultaneously investing in bonds and securities that would yield immense returns. The Legend of Waterloo, no story, illustrates the Rothschilds' skill and daring more than the Battle of Waterloo, 1815. While historians debate some details, the essence is clear. Nathan used speed of information and intelligence to gain an advantage that was unprecedented for a private banker. After Napoleon's final defeat, news traveled slowly. Telegraphs did not yet exist. Letters and messengers were the fastest way to transmit information. Nathan reportedly received early confirmation of victory at Waterloo via his network of couriers, faster than the British government itself. Using this information, he bought government bonds at favorable rates, anticipating a rise once the news became public. Even if the exact details are part legend, the story demonstrates a key principle. Information is as valuable as capital. Nathan's foresight, combined with the Rothschilds' network, turned a battle into a financial triumph, cementing the family's reputation as both intelligent and unstoppable. Financing Britain's war efforts beyond Waterloo, Nathan Rothschild played a central role in funding Britain's prolonged war against Napoleon. He arranged loans that enabled the government to maintain armies, pay allies, and purchase supplies. He transferred gold to fund campaigns on the continent. He advised ministers on the timing and structuring of bonds, creating a system that allowed governments to borrow efficiently and discreetly. The British government came to rely on Nathan Rothschild as much as any official treasurer. Yet he maintained discretion. No flamboyant displays of wealth, no political posturing. Success lay in being indispensable without being visible, a hallmark of Rothschild's strategy. The Rothschilds as war economists, the Napoleonic Wars were not just a battlefield. They were a financial laboratory. The Rothschilds experimented with international bonds, selling debt across borders to raise capital for governments. Currency arbitrage, moving funds in gold and silver to profit from exchange rate differences, secure transfers, transporting gold and securities via trusted couriers to reduce risk of theft or seizure. Early market speculation, using timely information to invest in bonds, government securities, and commodities. These innovations laid the groundwork for modern investment banking. Many techniques used today, from government underwriting to cross-border capital flow management, trace their roots to the Rothschilds' wartime operations. Nathan's personal rise by the 1820s. Nathan was one of the wealthiest and most respected men in Britain. Unlike some contemporaries, he did not flaunt his fortune in public. Instead, he invested in real estate, cultural institutions, and his family's long-term stability. His London headquarters became a hub of strategic finance. He cultivated relationships with statesmen, generals, and monarchs. He reinforced the Rothschild principle that trust, discretion, and information were more valuable than gold itself. Nathan's success elevated the Rothschild name from a modest Frankfurt coin-dealing family to a dynasty with influence across the continent. Governments sought their advice, ministers trusted their judgment, and competitors watched in awe. The aftermath of war, reinvestment and expansion. Victory at Waterloo did not mean the Rothschilds rested. They reinvested their war profits into Europe's reconstruction, financing railways, infrastructure, mining ventures, and new industries. France, bonds for railways and industry. Britain, investment in canals and early industrial enterprises. Austria and Germany, financing post-war recovery projects. Their approach was long-term, conservative, and diversified, ensuring that wealth accumulated during wartime was preserved and expanded. They were no longer merely bankers. They were architects of modern European finance, shaping the economic landscape for decades to come. Legacy of Nathan Rothschild. Nathan's career illustrated the combination of courage, intelligence, and discretion that defined the Rothschilds. He showed that private bankers could rival governments in influence and efficiency. Information and networks were as crucial as capital. Family unity allowed rapid and coordinated action across borders. Discretion ensured longevity. Fame could be dangerous, but subtle influence endured. By mastering these principles during Europe's most chaotic era, Nathan Rothschild ensured that the family would not only survive, but thrive in the 19th century. Step 4. Building Europe's industrial empire. The Napoleonic Wars had left Europe physically and economically scarred. Cities were damaged, trade disrupted, and governments deeply indebted. Yet from this turmoil emerged an unprecedented opportunity for the Rothschilds. They had wealth, intelligence, and a network unparalleled in Europe. The next chapter of their story was not just survival, it was industrial and economic transformation, from war profits to industrial investment. The Rothschilds understood that money alone was insufficient. The real power lay in strategic reinvestment. They transformed wartime profits into long-term assets by financing the burgeoning industrial economy of Europe. Railways. Railways were the arteries of the Industrial Revolution, enabling faster trade, migration, and communication. The Rothschilds provided capital to build major lines in France, Austria, and Germany, often underwriting government loans for these projects. Mining ventures, coal, iron, and other minerals were the lifeblood of industry. The family invested in mines across Spain, France, and Britain, ensuring that industrial expansion had a steady supply of raw materials. Bridges and canals. Infrastructure projects required enormous upfront capital and carried risks that governments often could not assume alone. The Rothschilds financed projects like French canals and urban bridges, facilitating trade and strengthening their reputation as reliable backers of progress. These investments were not merely profitable, they were strategic, allowing the Rothschilds to connect governments, industries, and markets while extending their influence across multiple sectors. Financing governments, the continuation of power, even in peacetime, Governments required funds for reconstruction and modernization. The Rothschilds had proven themselves in wartime. Now they applied the same principles to civil projects. France. James Rothschild financed industrial bonds and urban development, becoming a key advisor to French ministers. Austria. Salomon helped rebuild Vienna and supported Habsburg industrial initiatives. Britain. Nathan advised on the expansion of infrastructure to support the growing empire and industrial economy. Their work was meticulous. The family developed early risk management techniques, evaluating projects for potential returns, political stability, and long-term impact. They effectively invented a model for modern public-private partnership long before the term existed, creating the modern bond market. The Rothschilds' role in government finance went beyond lending. They pioneered new financial instruments that became standard in global markets, international bond issues. By selling bonds across borders, the Rothschilds created liquidity for governments and opened new avenues for investors. Underwriting government debt. They assumed initial risk for loans, ensuring governments could access immediate capital.
Part 3. Ennoblement and Cultural Prestige. By the mid-19th century, the Rothschilds had firmly established themselves as Europe's preeminent banking dynasty. Their influence stretched from Frankfurt to London, Paris, Vienna, and Naples. Yet, wealth alone was not enough to secure enduring respect in European high society. The Rothschilds understood that prestige, culture, and social standing were as vital as financial power. Through careful social positioning, philanthropy, and strategic marriages, the family transformed from wealthy financiers into ennobled icons of European society, blending discretion, elegance, and influence. The ennoblement across Europe. The 19th century was an era in which titles mattered. Aristocrats and royalty wielded social and political power. Bankers, no matter how rich, were often viewed as outsiders. The Rothschilds overcame these barriers. Through a combination of service, loyalty, and discreet wealth management. Britain. Nathan Mayer Rothschild's descendants were ennobled as barons. The family's London branch leveraged their financial contributions to the British state, particularly during wartime, to gain social recognition without ostentation. France. James Jacob Rothschild was made a count by the French government. The French branch built iconic chateaux and financed industrial and infrastructure projects, cementing their prestige among the elite. Austria. Salomon Rothschild was ennobled as a baron of the Austrian Empire, becoming a trusted advisor to the Habsburg monarchy, and blending seamlessly into Vienna's aristocratic circles. Through ennoblement, the Rothschilds bridged two worlds: the traditional aristocracy, which valued lineage and decorum, and the modern industrial financial elite, which valued intelligence, capital, and influence. This dual legitimacy further secured their status and expanded their reach. Architecture and estates, symbols of power. The Rothschilds' wealth was expressed not only through finance but also through architecture and real estate. Across Europe, they commissioned palaces, estates, and villas that became cultural landmarks. Waddesdon Manor, Britain. Built by Baron Ferdinand de Rothschild, this estate became a center for art, culture, and social gatherings, blending French Renaissance style with English landscape gardens. Château de Ferrières, France. Commissioned by James Rothschild, this chateau embodied French elegance, serving both as a family residence and a cultural hub for Parisian society. Palais Rothschild, Vienna. Salomon Rothschild and his descendants transformed these palaces into symbols of sophistication, hosting salons and concerts that attracted Europe's intellectual and aristocratic elite. These estates were more than residences. They were symbols of taste, discretion, and cultural leadership, reinforcing the family's social influence alongside their financial dominance. Art collection. Wealth meets culture. The Rothschilds were avid collectors of art, antiques and rare objects, viewing them as both cultural treasures and long-term investments. Their collections became legendary. Paintings by old masters such as Rembrandt, Vermeer, and Rubens, sculptures, tapestries, and decorative arts from across Europe. Rare coins, manuscripts, and collectibles that reflected Mayer Rothschild's early interests in numismatics. These collections were often shared through exhibitions, loans to museums, or as foundations for public institutions. Art served as a bridge between the family and society, demonstrating refinement, education, and sophistication. Philanthropy. Building trust and legacy wealth alone could not protect the Rothschilds from social prejudice, particularly against Jews in Europe. The family recognized that philanthropy was both a moral duty and a strategic tool. Jewish causes. Supporting schools, hospitals, and synagogues helped strengthen their communities and assert social responsibility. Universities and research funding. Educational institutions and scientific research increased their visibility as enlightened patrons. Hospitals and charities. Contributions to public health initiatives earned goodwill from governments and societies at large. Philanthropy became a hallmark of the Rothschild identity, discreet, strategic, and enduring. It enhanced prestige, protected against prejudice, and ensured that the family's name was associated not only with wealth, but with responsibility and culture. Social influence through marriage. The Rothschilds further consolidated power and prestige through strategic marriages, often within the family or allied European elite families. These marriages served multiple purposes: preserving wealth. Marrying within the family prevented capital dilution. Strengthening alliances. Connections with other powerful families reinforced political and social networks. Cultural integration. Marrying into aristocracy allowed the Rothschilds to blend into high society seamlessly. Through marriage, the Rothschilds became both financial and social architects, shaping networks that transcended borders and generations, balancing wealth and discretion. Despite immense influence, the Rothschilds maintained a careful balance between visibility and privacy. They avoided ostentation in business dealings, prioritizing results over recognition. Socially, they were prominent, but never scandalous, hosting salons and gatherings that reflected taste and refinement rather than ostentation. Public narratives of their wealth were controlled, allowing the family to avoid envy, rivalry, and political backlash. This balance between power and discretion became a defining characteristic of the Rothschild dynasty, distinguishing them from other wealthy families who flaunted their riches without strategic consideration. Cultural prestige as a strategic asset. By the late 19th century, the Rothschilds had achieved a rare form of dual power: financial dominance. Across Europe, they influenced government finance, industrial expansion, and international trade. Cultural authority. Through estates, art, and philanthropy, they shaped societal norms, taste, and intellectual life. Their prestige was not inherited but earned through vision, skill, and strategic investment in both money and culture. This cultural capital enhanced their financial capital, creating a virtuous cycle that reinforced the family's position across generations. Legacy of ennoblement and culture. The Rothschilds' social and cultural strategy left a lasting imprint. They became symbols of European cosmopolitanism, blending Jewish heritage with integration into aristocratic society. Their estates, art collections, and philanthropy set standards for taste, refinement, and responsibility. Through strategic marriages and discreet influence, they ensured the continuity of family unity and wealth. By combining finance, culture, and social strategy, the Rothschilds demonstrated that true power is multidimensional, not measured solely by wealth, but by trust, influence, and enduring legacy. Conclusion. The Rothschild model step by step. The Rothschilds had moved from a red-shielded house in Frankfurt to Europe's most powerful financial and cultural family. Ennoblement and cultural prestige were not mere accessories. They were strategic extensions of the family business, ensuring security, influence, and longevity. The 19th century Rothschilds became templates for modern elite dynasties. Disciplined, networked, and culturally sophisticated, demonstrating that wealth without culture or social integration could never achieve true, lasting influence. Challenges and competition in the late 19th century. By the late 19th century, the Rothschilds had built an unparalleled banking empire spanning Europe, with branches in London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, and Frankfurt. Their influence touched governments, industry, and society, making their name synonymous with wealth, trust, and discretion. However, the world was changing. New financial powers emerged, industrialization accelerated, and governments increasingly took a direct role in economic affairs. The Rothschilds faced challenges that tested the resilience of their dynasty. The rise of new financial competitors. While the Rothschilds had dominated government finance for decades, the late 1800s saw new financial giants emerging. J.P. Morgan, United States. Morgan revolutionized American finance, consolidating railways, creating industrial trusts, and financing government debt. His scale and aggressive strategies represented a new model of banking: corporate, centralized, and highly visible. European state banks. Governments increasingly established national banks and central banks, reducing reliance on private financiers. Institutions like the Reichsbank in Germany and the Banque de France strengthened state control over credit and currency. Industrial financiers. Entrepreneurs and financiers in Germany, Britain, and France began financing large industrial projects independently, reducing the Rothschilds' monopoly on large-scale loans. The Rothschilds were no longer the sole indispensable financiers. They now had to adapt to a world where scale, speed, and visibility mattered more than ever, adapting to a changing financial landscape. Despite increasing competition, the Rothschilds maintained relevance by innovating while preserving core principles. Diversification. They expanded beyond government bonds into railways, mining, shipping, and emerging industries. By spreading risk across sectors and countries, they mitigated exposure to political or economic shocks. Strategic partnerships. The family collaborated with other banks and financiers, including J.P. Morgan and European industrialists,